Today we're going to be editing a high-end kitchen I did for a real estate shoot, and it does a very good job of illustrating kind of the difference between shooting for real estate, where you have a lot of time constraints, you have owners, agents, things like that that need it done in a certain amount of time, versus when you work in architecture and you would come in and you would light block, you would block, glare, you would flag things off, you would do a lot of different things, and it's a good example of how you can still get really high-end, nice results that are a little more elevated than just sending it to an editor, or that are a little more elevated than putting it through software. But there are still some things to improve, like you'll see on the glare on this one that comes across one of the windows. There were these big 40-foot windows in the other end of the home that there was just no way I could do it in the time that I was given. This home is also really interesting because it's not a typical home. It doesn't have like the same drywalled walls that you would usually see and ceiling. It is more of a warehouse style that you'll see. And it's a really good representation of how to work with some weird color casting that comes from the windows. They were tinted and they were green, and just a nice way to blend all of that together. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. The other thing before we get editing I wanted to touch on is that the last couple videos have been a little low on volume, and that was just an oversight on my end. Running the business, doing as much as I have been doing these past couple weeks, and also trying to be better about producing these videos, just led me to kind of overly rely on the volume in my headphones and not actually look at the levels in the files themselves. So I appreciate those who have pointed it out to me. I do apologize for that, and going forward, we will make far more of an effort to remember to kind of stick to the basics and make sure everything is good to go before I export it. So without further ado, let's pop into Lightroom and let's get this editing going. All right, in Lightroom today, we are going to be working on this image of a high-end kitchen I did for a real estate shoot. This was not an architecture shoot, unfortunately, as much as I wanted it to be. But you can see we've got our raw files here, and we are going to be working through how to get this guy looking its best. So to start, we want to put our neutral start on, which is what I like to do. I'm going to go ahead and warm this up slightly. I do like it a little bit warmer, maybe like 6,000. That looks pretty good. We'll grab all of this, and then once I kind of get this a little more dialed in, we will sync it. Now what I'm doing here is this is just my base grade. We're not really worried too much about the windows. I'm not really worried too much about the shadows. As a matter of fact, I might even bring those shadows down just a little bit to keep the noise down on it. This is looking really good. For as far as I'm concerned, we're going to fix these windows. One of the things that we're going to see is this home is extremely strange. It is basically like a warehouse that has been converted into a house or a residence. And you can see, let's get the darker exposure here, that we've got these reflections here that we are going to be dealing with. And if this was an architecture shoot, I definitely would have gone out of my way in order to get this done, but I had a very limited amount of time to shoot this home, and it was not the greatest timeline for me, the greatest shooting conditions. It was really hard, and it was just spur of the moment, which is kind of how this shoot happened and was brought to me. But it was such a cool house, I wanted to shoot it. So you're going to see that these are going to be kind of prominent in there. Now, to deal with this in an architecture shoot, you would want to have some kind of large, there's a number of ways. The easiest way is to have some kind of large black cloth that you could come up and hang in front of each of these windows and block it, and then take a photo for each of them, and then you would mask that off. But this home is gigantic, and some of these windows in the back here are probably 40 to 50 feet in the air, and it was going to be a little bit difficult. But for what we're doing here, I think it's going to look okay, and it is what it is for the real estate side of it that this was, and the quick turnaround that we needed. We also do have a flash frame in here, which I'm going to bring in, neutralize that. And I do kind of like where this is at. We're not going, I don't know if I like it at 6300 though. Let me turn that down just a hair. This might help us get some of the glare off of here. We do have this guy, unfortunately. This is a single shot. That's all I did. I was cruising through this house. And so you'll see it's also blooming over here as well. Now the ceiling is where this gets kind of interesting because it's super, super dark and black and has all of this bar and like metal in it, and it casts so many shadows that it was a little bit difficult doing the editing for it when you did like we do luminosity, because like this, granted it's black up here, but all these shadows came in really strange. And this is one of those situations where like when you see somebody editing real estate and it's a white room with not a lot of stuff in it and they're saying like, oh, it's really easy, it just takes 2 clicks to do this or whatever, this is where that falls apart, is when you get something complicated like this home where this is just a lot to deal with. And we are going to do our best to get through it, but it's something to keep in mind when you're doing tutorials on here, is that when you see people working in white rooms only, it is a little bit of a kind of obfuscation of what the difficult things and what's going on. They're kind of setting themselves up for success. So we've got this guy ready to go here. I'm just going to sync this across, make sure our white balance and exposure is checked. And we'll sync that across. Let's double check our exposures to make sure we're good. This one's really dark. I'm not entirely... We could use it for, I don't think that's actually blown out over here. Let me just kind of play with this for a second. We do have a couple of blown out highlights here, which this might solve. So let me kind of pull that up. Yeah, I think we will use this. Now, granted, these are all raw. We're going to be working in those raw layers, so we won't have to worry too much here. This is a really nice neutral shot to bring in some of this. I really like where this is going. Like I said, I really wish this was not as reflective, but it is what it is. So we are going to go ahead, right click those, and we are going to say open as smart object layers in Photoshop, and we will let that come in now. I did fix the flickering issue if you saw the other tutorial. It had to do with the G-Sync that this monitor is being enabled over these applications, and had the new studio driver installed and things got moved around. So the flickering should be gone in this video. And our goal is going to be to really kind of emphasize these views as best we can and create something that's very natural looking, but still really pleasingly lit. This is not going to be an architecture style shot, but we do want it to feel kind of high end, because it is. Again, we've got that screen out here that I would just remove if we could in a normal architecture style shoot, or if I had the time, because those screens, they create that moir pattern that you see right here. And you can get this out, but it does come with some caveats when you do that, and it can affect it. And we'll see if we want to get that out. I don't think for what this is, it's really going to matter. And this is our base shot, so let's turn all these other guys off and take it down here. I like to move my flash up here, whoopsie daisy, and then we'll click where we're supposed to, not on our settings down there. And let's start here. So I always like to start in my darker areas. Now, I don't think that we're going to have a whole ton that we need to bring in up in this area, but I do want to bring in some light down on here. So let's take a look at one of these other exposures. I think we'll probably start with this one, and we may brush a small amount of this guy in. So let's start here, and let's go to our instant mask, and we'll start with a luminosity mask, and we're going to select our darks. This will be our darks one. And as we know, white reveals, black conceals, so we are pretty much targeting all that darkness down there. So let's drop it on here, arrange these a little bit. I'm going to get rid of that folder, turn that on, and honestly, that doesn't look that bad. I mean, the rest of it looks like crap, but that doesn't look that bad. So let's, as we usually do, oh man, is it shift? It is shift. Hold alt and click this. I always get those two backwards sometimes. You hold shift when you have the folder there to put it in the folder, and then you hold alt on the mask to create a black mask over it. So we'll grab our brush. And as you can see, super soft, 0% hardness, pretty large, and then our opacity is set to 15%. I think I'm going to change that down to 10. I like to really be light with all this stuff. Make sure we're on white. And let's just kind of paint that in. Now, there will be a little more of an emphasis on not having too much of a moodiness through this image, because this is more of a real estate style image.
And I do think I want to bring just a little bit more detail in down there. That does look really good though. I'm going to take my black brush and kind of paint that out. I do like that this is a little bit darker over here. Now, as we saw, we can paint in up here. I don't think it's worth it, because when we paint in up here, this doesn't really bring in a whole lot for us. You know what I mean? I might do let's do like 5% and just do like a quick click and hold, and we'll paint over it one time and see what that does. We're on black again, so that didn't do anything. Let's go this way. There we go. And let's see, did that? Yeah, see how that just kind of brought a little bit in there? I think that's what we're going to go with. Now, I do want to see if we can kind of bring anything out back here with this brush. Let's go back to 10%. Yeah, we can get a little bit more detail back there, because this wall is kind of interesting. It's like this burnt iron or steel, and this is actually charred lumber over here that they had as well. I think that looks pretty good. I don't even think I'm going to worry about painting anything in down here. That looks pretty good. So next I would like to deal with, oops, as I click, I would like to, it looks like we also might have a small glare here. We might fix that with some contrast. Or, tell you what, let's create here's what we'll do. Let's try something. Let's create a new smart object via copy. It's very important that you use new smart object via copy and you don't duplicate it. If you duplicate it with just like a Command J like this, every time you make an adjustment to the raw image in here, it will mirror it in this one because it is a one-to-one duplicate. Whereas if you use the create new smart object via copy, it actually makes a brand new smart object that is independent of the one you just did. Now I'm going to use this and we'll label it and we'll just say glare fix. And let's try and see how dark it gets with this and that glare kind of goes away. Let's take this guy down here and let's put a mask on it, turn him on, and let's use that 5% brush to very lightly paint a little dark in over that area. Gently feather that out. See that there? That looks pretty good. Let's make it a little more uniform. Yeah, there we go. Just like that. And that darkens it up, and that doesn't get too distracting. Maybe what we'll do is just paint a little bit of black back over that. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so that took care of that little tiny glare that we had going on there. Next, let's kind of work on bringing down some of these highlights. So as we usually do, Alt-Control-Shift-E to create a stamped visible layer. This helps us with instant mask and creating those masks, because sometimes when you're on the wrong thing, it doesn't work right, and it just makes it simpler for me. So we're going to go with our Brights 1 on this one. And then let's see here. This is our flash layer, which we don't really want to bring in yet. Let's use this layer again. Now, again, I'm going to use this for these windows. So let's go and grab this. Did we say this guy? Or did we say this guy? We said this guy right here. So let's do another smart object via copy. And let's label this one interior highlights, highs. Let's do that. Just because it reminds me of what we're doing with it now. We have this. Let's drop that guy on there. Get rid of this. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Now see, that is super, super flat. And that actually brought a lot of detail in to our windows, which is really cool. And we may use that, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to just work on the interior. I don't like to complicate things that much. So let's go Shift on that folder. Click there, and then what we'll do is let's kind of paint this stuff in. We'll stick with that 5% for now, just because it does make it very easy for us to do this gently. And see how that just brings those down a bit. Now, granted, you could probably get away with doing this. And this is a little blue, which we'll fix too later, maybe. Sometimes I forget to do my color correction. I'm moving a little too fast. Yeah, you know, I do like it. I was worried it was going to be a little bit too dark on it, but it doesn't. It's nice. And it just cuts that glare down enough so it's not crazy bright. And I think that's pretty good. Yeah, that looks really, really good. Okay, I'm gonna leave these lights the way that they are. Maybe just kind of tap a little bit there just to, yeah, bring that down just a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Now, you could go ahead and use this to do these exterior windows, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to hand trace them in because they're nice and square, and there's not a lot of, like, this thing's not in front of it where it gets really complicated, and I think that's what we're going to do. And then we will use our instant mask to help us bring in just a couple of these blown highlights here with this guy, or maybe not even use the instant mask. We'll see. So what we'll do, let's go ahead and close that guy down. We can get rid of this layer because we're not using it anymore. And then this is going to be our windows. So I'm going to put on here windows. And then we will just mask it off. Let's grab our pen tool. That's my favorite tool to use. And we will start doing this. Now, I usually like to go to where the glass goes when I do this stuff. We'll see if that kind of bites me in the ass. Sometimes it likes to. Now, when I do this, I have a 2-pixel feather on everything. And since, see how this piece of wood here, since it's wood, it kind of like moves up and down a little bit. I gotta be careful. That's why you don't want to go too big with some of this stuff. Let's get real close in here. Because if we get too big with it and we make too many drastic changes, this is a great place to use this. It can kind of bite us in the ass. Whoopsie daisy. And when it does that, you run into issues with getting like black bars and black lines on things, and then you end up having to go back anyway. A lot of times when you are doing this too, that's kind of the name of the game, is doing multiple passes with this stuff. And I know that when it comes to real estate editing and things like that, this is a little, I mean, this is time consuming, right? Like we're going to be, the last video that I did was something like 45 minutes long. And that is a lot to ask. And I'm sure that you could find some corners to cut in order to do this slightly faster, but that's not the point of this video. And it's also a good reason to think about hiring editors to do this stuff. I used to be a big proponent of doing everything myself, but as I have learned, see, this is another thing before I keep going. This is the brick outside. We want to go all the way over to this black line right here. I used to be a big proponent of doing everything myself. And then when you get really, really busy, you start to learn that you really can't do everything yourself. And by trying to, you have to cut some corners. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to deliver work that is, you know, a little bit different, a little bit off here. Maybe it doesn't have as good a contrast. It's still good work. It's not bad, right? So see, here's what I did wrong. I did not keep that same selection. So what we'll do is we'll just go fix that, no problem. It is no big deal. We will just go, it doesn't matter because we're going to add all the, whoops, daisy. I should be in full screen mode. Let's get rid of that guy, huh? I should have done this, but it doesn't really matter since we're down here. This is already all selected, so I'm just going to just draw kind of willy-nilly here. And we will see, this is where it gets goofy, right? Is I should have selected the entire thing, and I didn't. So now we need to make the decision, because we're askew, are we going to go back and are we going to add this? And I think we will, because if it doesn't work, it's fine. We can always just come clip it back out. It's no big deal. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? We're experimenting on this one. Okay, so we have that drawn out. Now let's go draw out this stuff. Now, what the hell is that? That was strange. That is just an artifact of Photoshop. So I think what we're going to do is we'll do the same thing here. Go this way. Let's see, there we go. But yeah, this is really time consuming. And it's something that like you can see that you can get pretty good results. And again, you could do HDR with this. You could just run it through an HDR program. You could run it through Infuse. You could get really, really good at doing 2 or 3 flashes and go with that. And, you know, maybe that is what you do, but it doesn't cost that much money in order for you to do what? I mean, if we're talking 40 photos is what you're going to deliver, and say you're sticking pretty rigidly to that, well, you're going to have at least 30 interiors. And if those interiors take you, I don't know, 5 minutes, let's say you're really good, it's 3 minutes. So that's going to take you 30 minutes to do that. How many shoots do you do in a day, right? You're going to run at volume at that because you're like, oh man, I can really cruise through it. Man, I can do 30 photos in 30 minutes. Actually, no, 30 photos in 30 minutes, that would not be it. 10 times 3 would be 30. So that would take you 10 photos every 30 minutes. If you're going to do 30, that's an hour and a half of your time. If you can do 30 photos in 30 minutes, hats off to you. I can't do that. But that's an hour and a half of your time. And like, what do you pay yourself? Because I guarantee you, even if you went with a really expensive editor like I go with, who's really, really good and takes their time and isn't just trying to turn and burn as quick as possible, you're only paying, you know, at most $60 maybe for that. Oops, let's go back. And $60, I mean, I don't know what you guys pay yourself, but I pay myself far more than $60. And we will go take this bar out because I do realize, I think, yeah, we will go take this bar out. That is no problem. There it is. We went over one too far. But yeah, you'll pay yourself $60 or more. I mean, I pay myself way more than $60. So it's something for me that, like, it's worth it to find an editor that you trust, that you know and you like, and pay them to do it. And I know that that's kind of goes against the grain sometimes with a lot of you guys who do this, and I get it, trust me. Oh my God, what am I doing? Wait, no, that was correct. Subtract, there we go. Because you want to make money doing this, and it's kind of hard if you don't charge enough. And this kind of goes in full circle, right? With how much money to charge, how much your time is worth, how many employees you have, what's your overhead, all that good stuff. And so it's something that I think we should remember when we're thinking about hiring editors is, what do you pay yourself versus how much does it cost to have an editor? So there we go. Oh, missed this one. I must have done something a little goofy here. Let's go reselect this guy. That's my bad. Oh, don't tell me. Oh, I did. I screwed it up. See, this is why you got to be careful. Yep. Okay, we didn't screw it up too terribly. All right, there we go. This is why you got to be careful. We're going to do this one live. I am not editing that mistake out. Sometimes I hold Shift and Alt to do this a lot because Shift adds, Alt subtracts, and or something like that. And sometimes I get clicking a little bit too fast. That's okay though. This isn't that bad of a trace. Like I said, one thing I love about the pen tool is how flexible it is to do all this stuff. You could use the polygonal lasso tool, which I'm also learning is there's a big point of contention in architecture and among editors. Is it polygonal or is it polygonal? And my thing to that is, do you say diagonal or do you say diagonal? Because if you want to say diagonal, that's fine with me. I think that's consistent. But if you say polygonal and diagonal instead of polygonal and diagonal, I don't know. It's a weird debate. I'm sure it's going to happen in the comments eventually. But there we go. So we have those traced out. So we can just go ahead and dye these, I usually like to use the paint bucket tool and just boom, dye those in there. Now, that is actually, that doesn't look horrific. It is a little bit under brightened. There's a couple under brightened. It's underexposed. But what we can do is come in here and just give that a little boosty boost. Let's give it about a half a stop. And this is why I enjoy using Camera Raw. If you wanted to, another way that you could do this is you could come in here, levels, curves, brightness, contrast, whatever. Come in here, hold Alt, and then click on the little line between the two of these, and then that only affects that bottom layer. And then you can sit there and see how we can drag this around, and we can do what we want with it. That's another way to do it. I like using Camera Raw. I'm more comfortable with Camera Raw, so I tend to just do it this way. It is definitely an extra step it takes you, to be completely honest, quite a bit longer to do this than it does the other way. I kind of want to see if we can put like a medium contrast curve on this. Let's see what that does. See if that gives us like a nice punch. Yeah, there we go. That looks good. Now all we need to do is get those highlights corrected up here. So that's going to be this boy. And let's go in, and just so we have matching, let's go in here and let's kind of pull those highs down, but we'll boost it up a little bit. And then, let's go to the curve, and let's also add that medium contrast curve, just so we have a similar contrast curve. We'll probably go back in and also change the white balance on some of these, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, let's see. So we're gonna go here, and let's just mask it off. I'm not entirely sure we need to do a luminosity mask here. And make sure we're on our brush, white 5%, and let's just kind of pick that high spot here. Let's see, how does that work? Is that coming in? It is. The detail is very, very subtle. Gotta zoom in. There we go. Yeah, just get us a little more detail in those clouds so they don't feel so pushed. Another one here. It was a fairly hazy day when we did this, so unfortunately, as you can see, let's go to 10%. Fortunately, as you can see, there is a bit of haze in this sky, and it is what it is. Yeah, there we go. Whoops. We'll go through and we will get some more correction done. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if we even need to use this. I don't think so. I think it looks fine without it. This is a good HDR without a flash. It looks fine. Doesn't really help us with any of the glare. And you could, again, a circular polarizer might help if you're going to do something like this instead of blocking it off. Circular polarizers get really tough. This was just a rough situation. So I think what we're going to do now, let's kind of brush out some of this blue here. Also, let's go into our window one. Let's check our color on this guy. He's at 6,000. What do we think? We want to go back to blue. Maybe even slightly warmer, like 6,350. Let's do that. Yeah. What do you think here? I do like that. I like that 6,350. That looks good. One of the other things that was tough about this is that these windows were green. They had like a tint on them. And so that's why we're at like plus 39 here, is because, man, was it green inside. Let's go. I don't want to go too far. Let's go to like 45, 46-ish. Let's try that and see if that makes them feel just a little bit better. That's a little bit too magenta for me. Let's go, because it wasn't like 39. Let's try like 42. Hit OK. There we go. That's pretty good. And I like that. I think it's good. These clouds are backlit. That's kind of the reason they look like this, is the sun is up over here backlighting those, but that's okay. I think the next thing we're going to do, let's Alt Control Shift E. Just to have it. So we have our stamped visible layer. We're not going to use these two top ones at all. I am going to try and correct out some of this bluing here. So let's see what we can do with a hue and saturation. Now, one thing we can do is we can take our blues. Now, this is going to affect everything, so just keep that in mind. And that does pull them out. That does look really good. Okay, let's pull all the blue out. And let's see if there's any problem with greens. Greens can also... We can see if we turn it all the way up where that green is coming in at. And we don't want it. So I think we'll pull the green down too. And I don't think we need to worry too much about any of the other ones. Magentas can be an issue sometimes. We can see, yeah, a little bit. Let's pull those out as well. Okay, and then what we're going to do is Control-I to invert that and bring it back. And then we're going to come in here and we are going to XD, X, make sure we're on there. We're just going to go nice, lightly paint out. Let's go to 15. 15 usually is a little bit faster. Paint out that blue. Yeah, that blue cast that we're getting. That keeps our nice warm lighting tones. Takes it out of all this. Will help us take it off this wall a little bit too. Yeah, there we go. See how that kind of brings all that out? Really helps us out. Now, I don't think I want to paint it in anywhere else. Quite simply, well, maybe here. Let's see. Yeah, just get it off the wood here. Yeah, I don't think I want to paint it in off the walls and stuff like that because the walls, they're fine. Now, what I'll show you, let's go and do, if I remember where it is. Is it effect? It is not effect. Is it detail? It is not detail. Is it optics? It is not. I think it's a filter if I remember right. What I'm going to try and do is show you the moir correction. And we'll just kind of paint with reckless abandon here. And let's see. I know that there's a moir reduction. I don't always remember exactly where it is, but it's not there. Oops. I always forget where it is. There's dehazed, grain, point color, detail, moir reduction. There it is. And can we get it out? See how we lose some color? What we may do, let's see, right? And that's a lot. What we may do is do it right there. Okay, here's what we'll do. Let's do a new one. So new smart object layer via copy. Let's do more. Let's do, I don't even forget. Is it moire like that? M-O-R-I-E. I don't remember. Moire. And let's see here. We will delete this layer mask, put another one on it, and we'll come in here and we'll just pull that moire reduction down. Now, I don't know if it's in here. See, it's not in this panel, which is why I'm always confused. So we'll come in, we'll brush that guy in again, just whatever. We're not going to use a whole lot of this. We're just going to target it. And the problem comes in is that, like, if we come into that detail and we do the moire reduction and we take it out, the other issue we're going to run into is I don't think I can come back in and, like, bring the saturation back up. Oh, maybe. Maybe a little bit, right? Like something like that. Okay, and then that'll bring it in. And then what we'll do is we will get our brush. And let's see if I'm dumb. That's right there. That was pretty good. Man, it's just all over this window, isn't it? That's why I hate these screens. Granted, it is a product of high megapixel sensors to a degree. That's the wrong one. Is it? Yes, it is the wrong one. It's not terrible. I think it works for what we're doing. The other thing you could also do, let's not do that. Let's do Control Shift new layer. One thing we could also do is we can try and use the AI removal. Not AI, well, I guess it is, but there we go. And that works pretty good. Okay, so now that's done. Got that done in real time. Now what I would like to do, now that we have all of this stuff done, let's go through and adjust our contrast like we did last time. So let's Alt-Control-Shift-E, give us a new layer. Instant mask. We're going to pick our darks first. We're going to turn that into a curves layer. And I'm going to show you guys an alternate way to do this. So one thing that you can do, I tend to come in here and always choose like medium contrast, and I know that that only affects our shadows. But one thing that you can do is you can also leave it, and then you can kind of point and drag it around if you guys would like to get your shadows, midtones, wherever you kind of want them. That is another way of doing it. Also, we can change that to, again, luminosity, and then it will only affect the brightness and not anything else. I think that looks pretty good in those shadows. I don't want to go too crazy dark with them. Let's see. I'll leave that there. Like I said, I tend to like to do these kind of contrasts and then take them and subtract them out. It really depends. Sometimes I'll pull the slider around, but I tend to kind of like to keep it simple rather than complicate it. If that makes sense. We're going to click on this layer again. I'm going to turn that contrast off so that it doesn't affect our selection, excuse me. We're going to do our midtones. Same thing, click that curves button, make it a curves layer. And then while we're still here, let's go ahead and do our brights as well. And curves layer. We can label these if we'd like. Curves high. Curves mid. And curves darks. Turn those all back on. Make sure that these are going to be in luminosity mode. And this is our midtone, our mid curves. And we can go in and do that medium contrast again. Again, I could show you if we do it this way. Say you wanted to darken those midtones a bit, bring some more contrast back into them. You can do it this way. You can go that way. I tend to prefer to do this and then kind of adjust around a little bit until I see something like that's good. And then we will go to our highs. And again, that contrast curve. This is our brights. And I think that looks pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to adjust it too much. Yeah, it looks pretty solid. And then another little trick too, the last thing I'll show you guys on this one, if you are ever, I'll do an Alt-Control-Shift-E to have this, if you're ever trying to find out if something is, you want to saturate it enough, one tip you can do is make a vibrance layer, change it to a, where is it, difference, and then you can drag these sliders until you see it to appear like that, and then drag it till it just disappears. And then the same thing with the saturation. And then you can come back, change it back to normal, and then you have an image that is nicely saturated. Now, again, I feel this is a little bit too heavy for what I'm doing and what I want out of this image. I like to be a little bit more neutral with what I do. But you can see as we turn it on and off, that is one way to do it. And if you wanted to, you could also Control-I to invert that, take your brush, and if we wanted to, like, you know, paint in a little more vibrance at these windows. Just quickly click around and do that. And you can see that just gives us a little bit more color pop out of those windows. But that would be a finished image for me. If you wanted to flatten it, you could. You could just go ahead and flatten it all the way down. And that would be the finished image that I would do. Let's have a look at everything that we did before we wrap this up. I will do one more flattened image on here. And then let's turn everything off and we'll build it all back up so we can kind of see it. So here's where we started with this image. Then we went and we brushed in a little bit of those shadows. We then fixed the little bit of glare that we had up at the top left corner. We then took some of the glare off with a darker exposure on the countertops. We then brought in our windows. We then brought in our we brought in our fix for the moir, which we did earlier or later in the edit. We then brought in our highlights here where they were just a little bit blown out. We then did a hue and saturation to kind of adjust out the blue that was bleeding in on this gray stone concrete countertop. We don't need this guy, I don't believe. Then we did all of our contrast that we brought in. Our highs, our mids, our shadows. Then did a vibrance adjustment to bring in just a little bit more vibrance out of those windows. And that's really it. This is a finished photo. I'm pretty happy with it. Again, I wish these weren't here, but there is nothing I could do about it with the time that I had. And sometimes it's just like that. The last thing that you could do that we have not done terribly is you come in and grab a couple of these little things. Again, for this image, since this is not for anything other than a real estate photo, I don't think I would do that. I would just kind of leave it the way it was unless there was something really glaring that you could take out from here, but I don't really think so. I think we're looking good. So that will do it for this tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. There's going to be a lot more of these coming, as this is kind of what I really enjoy doing with a lot of these YouTube videos, is kind of making tutorials for you. So if there's anything you want to see, anything difficult, anything you'd like me to show you, please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, any other questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer them. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.